then I'm going to, if it gives me the option. Hello, Sisters in Crime. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and thanks especially to Smita Harish Jain, who is going to be talking today about submitting to anthologies and magazines. But first, a few housekeeping announcements. So I hope everybody is saving the date for our next Reading Like a Writer book group. We're going to be discussing the craft book Story Genius on September 19th, and check out the Sisters in Crime website for more details or to sign up for that. Also on the website, you will see details about upcoming webinars, write-ins, and member meetups. And a big congratulations and shout out to the Sisters in Crime Executive Director, Julie Henricus, who is the winner of the 2026 David Thompson Special Service Award from the National VoucherCon Board. So that's going to be presented at VoucherCon in October in Calgary. I like to think of it as just like the award for general awesomeness, because she is generally really awesome. So as I was saying, I'm thrilled to be joined today by Smita Harish Jain. Hi, Smita.
Hey, Mindy.
So Smita and I Zoom almost every weekday for our Chessie chapter writing write-in at noon. So we see each other in 2 dimensions a lot. So this feels very natural for us. Smita is a 2-time International Thriller Writers Award nominee for Best Short Story. She has published dozens of short stories in Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine and anthologies from Mystery Writers America, VoucherCon, and many, many others. She grew up in Mumbai, India, and now works as a university professor, both of which inform her crime fiction. Today, she's going to be sharing her hard-won wisdom about submitting to anthologies and magazines. So thanks again for joining me today, Smita.
Thank you so much for having me. These are so fun.
I am delighted to have you on as a guest. And in that little intro, I just wrote that your wisdom is hard won, but I actually have no idea. For all I know, your wisdom is very easily won. But I wanted to know, is your path to publication, has it been hard? And what has that path looked like for you?
Well, you're right on both counts. It's been hard and it's been easy. And I'll tell you what I mean. What made it hard is when I came into short stories, I knew nothing about how the process worked. I just wanted to write stories and send them off and get them published. And so, of course, I made a lot of mistakes. But the good thing was when you recover from those mistakes, you get a lot of hard-won lessons. So that was the hard-won part. The easy part was that there are so many good people, kind and generous in this industry, that they helped me along the way. So yes, hard-won, but also with a lot of help. Let me give you a couple of early examples. My first short story was published in one of our chapter anthologies in an early Chesapeake Crimes. And you know how wonderful the Chessie chapter is. So I can't imagine an easier and better way to start writing anything, short stories, novels, because there was so much support. So that was great. My second short story came out in the Akashic Noir City series. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but this should sum it up. I had an agent once describe that series to me, and they said that series is effing impossible to get into. But she used the word, and I'm not sure if we're allowed to swear in the middle of the day.
I'll just yell bleep if you say it.
Okay, there we go. Okay, I'll try to control myself. But she said that, and I didn't understand any of this on my second short story out. And I said to an author friend of mine, I would love to be in this anthology. I saw it on their website, and the next one up is Mumbai Noir, where I grew up. I love Mumbai. I'd love to have a seat. It makes so much sense. I'd love to be in this, not realizing that it's effing impossible to get into. I also didn't realize that the people that write for the series are the best authors who write in that city, about that city. And they're not even usually short story writers. At least at the time, they were mostly novelists who took time away from novels to be in these anthologies. Plus, they're by invitation only. So one whole short story under my belt. I know none of these things. So as I'm talking to my author friend, she says, well, you know, I can find out the name of the editor and get you his contact information, and then you can just send your story directly to him. Now, as I'm saying this, I'm cringing. Don't do this at home. Everything I'm telling you is the what not to do. It was horrible, but that was one of those kindnesses that my friend said, oh, if you don't have submission guidelines, I'll just get them for you. So no submission guidelines. She just got me the contact information. So I wrote my story and I sent it off to this editor. And kindness number 2, he actually wrote me back. And he didn't say, stop writing to me, you lunatic. He said, look, I think you're a good writer, but this story is just not right for this anthology. And I thought, oh, darn, I really wanted to be in this anthology. But then I kept reading and he said, but there is this one sentence on page 12 that I really like. It was an 18-page story. So he liked my one sentence on page 12. And if you are willing to rewrite your entire story around it, I think you could have something. What else did I have to do, right? And I still don't know the big deal it is to even be considered for this series. So I go off and he explains to me why he thinks that that is my story. And the other 17.98 pages don't really amount to much, but write that story. That's the one I want to read. So I went off and I did all the things and I sent it back to him, and he wrote me back a few hours later and he said, I love what you did. Sent it to the publisher. He loves it too. Great story. You're in. Right. And so never once said to me what you did was wrong and inappropriate. Don't do it again. Never told me that I did anything wrong. But then I later realized what I had done. I haven't done it since. So the cautionary tale here is find generous people, right, who won't rat you out. So yes, it's been hard won, but there are some wonderful people.
Yeah, I mean, I've had experiences like that too. And you said don't do this at home. And I agree, because I think the odds of making a fool of yourself are high. But I also think we all have been in this position and we all understand that you do have to kind of fake it till you make it sometimes. And that sort of like gumption and cojones mixture is the only thing that ever gets the work out the door. Like you just have to send it on that day that you feel brave and go for it.
Yeah.
So
you're being very kind, Mindy. Of course, I did it all out of cluelessness. And in hindsight, I don't know what I would have done had I known. But you're right. It's some days you just have to do what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So this speaks a little bit to the next question that I wanted to ask you, which is like one of your tips is read the submission guidelines carefully. Clearly, you did not do it that time.
Really not.
But, you know, that is an easy way to make sure that what you're doing is going to get read, you know, like because it's so easy. These places get a lot of submissions, so easy just to cast something off because it didn't meet the submission guidelines. So what are your tips? I mean, other than like follow the friggin' directions, what are your tips vis-a-vis submission guidelines?
So I don't know if these are tips so much as just why you should. Sometimes a lot of people think submission guidelines are just about word count, but they're about so much more than that. They're about things like theme, sometimes genre, sometimes payment. Are you even getting paid? And if you're getting paid, what is the fee structure? Is it a flat fee? Is it a share of royalties? It's things that you want to know ahead of time, because let's say you're not getting paid, or let's say you're getting paid, the standard or the minimum is $25. If you're not getting at least $25, you're not eligible for certain awards like the Edgars, and it can't be payment in kind. And these are all the little fine details that you want to read before you submit, if that's important to you. So it's not just about money. It's also about who's going to see my story, who's going to evaluate my story, who's going to judge my story. And all that lives in the submission guidelines. Plus, as you said, editors, if you read and follow the guidelines, they know that you're being a professional. They know that you're taking this seriously and not just finding a submission market and then sending it off, right? Just a quick aside, if you're submitting to a magazine, I would say read the submission guidelines, but also read earlier issues of the magazine, because you'll get a real flavor for the kinds of stories that they want to be publishing. So that was just a quick aside. But what else would I
think that's a great point, though, that like every one of these publications has their own feel. You know, you don't want to come into a Malice domestic anthology with like a gruesome rape on the first page. You know, that's just not the place for that story.
Well, so can I do since you said gruesome rape, and I do tend to
And I
write
didn't go
dark,
there.
yes, it is, and you said I could swear. Can I tell you a quick story about
Please.
something like that? And I agree with you that you shouldn't do it, but back to my cluelessness. You mentioned that I'd been nominated a couple of times for a thriller award. The first time that I was nominated, it was for a story that appeared in Ellery Queen. And it was my first nomination ever for anything. And it was very exciting. As you know, since you were recently nominated for an Agatha and you won, yay. I didn't win, but that's okay. It was still very exciting. And that year, Janet Hutchings, who was the editor of the magazine, took a few of her authors to dinner at Malice. And in the course of conversation, I said, I'm surprised that this story was nominated for a thriller award because it's so cozy. And Janet, I think she might have dropped her spoon mid-bite because she shook her head and she said, cozy? How could you think it was cozy? You tortured someone to death with hot tar. And I said, well, yes, granted, I did that. But it was in Ellery Queen, and Ellery Queen doesn't publish dark, noir, and all the rest of it. And I said, so I just thought, not that they published just cozy, but I didn't think it was dark. And she said, you're right. I don't usually accept stories like that, but I liked it and I wanted to publish it, but stop sending me those. Go back to sending me the other ones. So you are right. You don't want to go into a Malice anthology with a rape and a murder on the first page. But you know what? Like you said, shoot your shot because maybe they'll change their mind. No, I'm just kidding. That was a complete fluke that story got in. But anyway,
this is turning into like a what not to do.
What not to do. You know, that's also advice.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned that I don't want to gloss over because I think it's important is speaking of like dropping spoons. I was on a chat recently with other writers about short story writing, and this actually I think came up in the Chessie chapter meeting too about how this used to be something people could make a living at, that you used to be able to send a story and get, you know, what at the time, say it was $300, but this was in 1920 where that was like a reasonable amount of money. Yeah. And this is something people used to be able to do. There are many examples in, you know, British and American literature in particular of like somebody who made their whole career as a short story writer. And this is really not the case. Like it's hard no on that. So, I'm glad that you mentioned that the standard payment is $25 because I think I was once paid $75 for a short story.
Yeah, was that for a VoucherCon anthology?
I can't remember what that was for, but it was, you know, that was like big money. That was, you know, something that I could actually like take just myself out to dinner, not another person. Exactly. Just myself.
Yeah. I think I might know two people who could actually legitimately say that they make a living at short stories, and that's it. And so I hope that nobody wants to do this for the money. But I will say this. I think the $25 is just so stories are eligible for awards. Not all the awards need you to make money. So it's not a surprise that $25 is standard, but there are anthologies and magazines that pay by the word. And so you can make hundreds of dollars. But again, that's not enough to live on, right?
Absolutely.
But I want to say one more caution about submission guidelines. Sometimes when you write a story or a novel and it gets rejected and you just want it to go out and you've worked hard on it, sometimes writers will say, you know what, I'm just going to send this out broadly and see where it lands. And one of the things that submission guidelines tell you is, can you do simultaneous submissions? Meaning, can you send it to our magazine and send it to other magazines and then just let us know if you've sold it somewhere else? But a lot of them will say no simultaneous submissions. And if you miss that no, and you go ahead and send it out broadly, then when your story gets accepted, you have to go and tell every other magazine it's no longer available. Well, they said you weren't supposed to do simultaneous submissions. So read them carefully. And even if it's for editors that you've written for, they might change. So make sure you just keep up with them. They're important.
So that's something that I want to ask you a little bit more about, because I think as with many arenas of publishing, like right now, short story anthologies are rife with scammers. So there are tons of people that are very happy to steal your story and steal your money at the same time.
Yay!
So can you talk a little bit about things like exclusive submissions, paying for publication or jury or judging of your story, and the length of time of the publication process so that people can get a sense of what's normal versus like where the red flags start to be waved?
Yeah, that's such a tough question. The longer you write, the more you get to work with people that you've worked with before. So in the early days, you submit, you build up a reputation, but then at some point, people invite you to submit. And then you get used to working with that person. So it becomes easier. And a lot of that stuff that you're describing doesn't happen. Sometimes it happens, but not so much. But there are things that you want to pay attention to, like, do you have to pay a fee to submit? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but a lot of authors will say, I'm not paying for the possibility that I might get published, right? And some of these reading fees can be $15, $25. Well, if you're making $25 and paying $25, just stay home. So submission fees are a big thing. Will you make at least $25 is a big thing. Editors. Choose editors. I like to choose editors that I can learn from, like the one from my Mumbai Noir story. What he taught me about finding the story that I'm really trying to write, I use to this day. There's not a story I've written since then where his words haven't come into my mind. Make sure that the personality of the editor jives with what you like to do.
Do you remember what the sentence was, by the way?
No. Everybody asked me the sentence, and I don't think it was the sentence so much as he was saying, this is where your story is. That sentence is your story, but you're not telling me that story. So I think that's what he was saying. I think I have to find this sentence because people keep asking me. Yeah, but I can't right now. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so I derailed you just out of curiosity.
No, you didn't
go on. So
yes,
so find an editor that you jive with, that you can work with.
Yeah, find editors that you can work with. I've had so many short story writers say to me, I got edits from this editor and I don't agree with them. What do I do? And it's an important question because it's not that you say, oh, I hate you, I'm done with you, but writing is supposed to be a collaborative process. You get edited, there are things that you don't want to change and things that you're willing to listen to the other side, but not all editors work that way. Not all authors work that way. So there are a lot of things that could go wrong, but the longer you do this, the more you hear about publishing houses that are good and editors that are good. And for the most part, I'd say 95% of them, you'll never have any issues with. But you want to ask around and talk to people and say, what was your experience with this person? And see if it would work for you.
Working with good editors has actually taught me a life lesson, which is that if you start off with the positive and be like as positive as you can possibly be about whatever your feedback is, and then deliver the criticism, and then that like critique sandwich that the best editors build, it really does lower people's hackles. If I absolutely love so much about this short story. The writing is so strong. I was swept away by the setting, and however, the entire plot just fell on its butt and was terrible. Makes no sense. But really love the writing, keep it up, and then just totally rewrite the plot. And like that's basically what happened to you with that first editor, that he was like, hate 95% of this, love 5% or less. So like let's build on that.
And I will still to this day say that is the best editing experience I've ever had, because I don't mind doing the work, but boy, did he teach me how to hone in.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody who has joined us today. And Smita, do you have any last words of wisdom about, by the way, we're going to publish your top tips for submitting to anthologies and magazines in the captions of this so that people can share in your wisdom later. And then I'll have people tag you if they have questions or they want to follow up so that you can tag, or you can see those tags in the comments as well. But before we sign off, do you have any last words of wisdom for those who are tuning in?
Boy, we really filled this time up fast.
I know, it goes so fast.
I know. I will just say one thing. There's a book that I read recently, which I think everybody has read, but if you haven't read it, pick it up. It's called, wait a minute, I wrote it down. Let me just make sure I say it all right because it's a very long name. It's called A Swim in a Pond in the Rain by George Saunders. And he takes a look at some of the great Russian writers and looks at their short stories, and then he analyzes them. So if you want to learn what makes for a great short story and how it's crafted and emotional resonance and character and plots and all of that, I would recommend that book. And I'll send it to you so that you can add it later if you want to.
I will definitely add that to the comments. So that is super helpful. And I hope that those who tuned in got a lot out of this conversation and learned a lot from your wisdom, so that they don't have to make some of those mistakes, or that they make them in their own fresh and interesting ways.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mindy.
All right. Delightful to have you on, and we'll see everybody soon.
All right.
All right. Bye.